The first question says, what represents a physical quantity? Now, there are two conditions for a physical quantity. It should have a numerical magnitude, एक number associated होना चाहिए उसके साथ, और उसी के साथ साथ it should also have a unit. So the first one has a numerical magnitude but no unit. The second one has a unit but no numerical magnitude. The third one has both, 7 newtons. The last one, 40% is not actually a unit. So आपका आंसर हो गया C. Question 2 says the relationship between the variables capital D and T is given by the equation 1 upon T is equal to B upon under root D plus T, where B and C are constants. The unit of D is meter squared and the unit of T is seconds. What are the units of B and C? So the thing is, for any equation, if it's homogeneous, the units on the left hand side should be equal to the units on the right hand side, which means कि ये वाला जो term आपको दिख रहा है 1 upon T, इसका जो unit है इसका भी वही unit होना चाहिए और इसका भी वही unit होना चाहिए, right? All three of these should have the same unit. So let's see. 1 upon time period. 1 upon time period has the unit per second is equals to B upon under root D, where D has the unit meter squared. So under root D will have the unit meter. Okay? Under root meter squared would give you meter, is plus C, which is also an unknown. अब इस C का unit is B upon M के unit के equal होना चाहिए, और इस B upon M का unit is per second के equal होना चाहिए. So I can say, easily say C is equals to per second. So the answer should be B or D. As far as B is concerned, B upon M should also be equal to per second. B is equals to meters per second. So the answer is B. Okay, I hope this is clear. Vaji, log out and log back in again. I don't think my screen is frozen. Question number 3 says a hollow cylinder which is open at both ends has a radius of 3 plus minus 0.1 centimeter and a length of 15 plus minus 0.1 centimeter. What is the value with its absolute uncertainty of the surface area of the cylinder? So for this hollow cylinder, this is what our cylinder looks like. So this is our hollow cylinder. There we go. The surface area for the cylinder will be 2 pi r, which is basically this thing, multiplied by this height, multiplied by this length. So the volume, the surface area is 2 pi rh. So 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by radius, which is given as 3 centimeters, but all the answers here are in centimeter square, so that is not a problem. Multiplied by 3, multiplied by the height, which is 15. And that gives you the answer as 282.7 centimeter squared, which basically means that my answer could either be A or B. It cannot be C or D. अब A होगा या B होगा कैसे पता चलेगा? एक तो लेंदी तरीका है, वो भी हम करते हैं, लेकिन डायरेक्ट तरीका आप थोड़ी इंट्यूशन से भी कर सकते हो कि देखो जब क्योंकि R और H मल्टीप्लाई हो रहे हैं तो इनके एरर्स आप सीधा सीधा ऐड नहीं कर सकते. यू कैन नॉट से 0.1 प्लस 0.1 होगा, नो. ठीक है, और 0.1 प्लस 0.1 का आंसर 0.2 आता है, एंड यू नो यू कैन डू दैट. सो B cannot be the answer. The answer therefore has to be A. Or the lengthier approach to this is let's find out the percentage error of this. The percentage error in radius comes out to be 3.33%. And the percentage error in length comes out to be 0.67%. 0.67%. And because R and H are being multiplied, the errors, the percentage errors will get added up. कोई पावर नहीं है यहाँ पर, तो उस पावर को हमने कंसिडर नहीं करना है. सो टोटल परसेंटेज एरर in the surface area is 3.33 plus 0.67, which is equals to 4%. मतलब जो आपका ऊपर आंसर आया है उसमें 4% का एरर होगा. ठीक है, तो लेट्स फाइंड आउट 4% ऑफ 282.7. 4 upon 100 into 282.7. What does that give us? 4 upon 100 into 282.7. And that gives me 11.3. See, error is always rounded off to one significant figure. So 11.3 rounded off to one significant figure becomes 10. तो ये आपके पास 10 हो गया. The principal value is always rounded off to the place value of the corrected error. तो ये आपका डेसिमल से 2 पहले है, तो ये भी डेसिमल से 2 पहले पे आके रुक जाएगा. तो this will be 280 plus minus 10. The answer is A, irrespective of whether you do it directly or you do it using the lengthier approach. The lengthier approach will get you the right answer every time. That was question number 3. Which shapes formula for areas or volumes do we have to memorize? जो basic shapes है ना, जैसे cylinder हो गया, sphere हो गया, cube हो गया, cuboid हो गया, सही, वो आपको पता होने चाहिए. पिरामिड का नहीं आता, कभी आ गया तो वो फॉर्मूला आपको दे देंगे. अच्छा, why we cannot add the errors directly? When two quantities are being multiplied or divided, their errors cannot be added. Add या subtract हो रहे होते हैं ना दो क्वांटिटी, r और प्लस h होता है या r माइनस h होता है, तो इनके एरर्स को हम डायरेक्ट ऐड या ऐड कर देते हैं. लेकिन जब मल्टीप्लिकेशन या डिवीजन होती है तो आप परसेंटेज एरर्स को ऐड करते हो. Question number 4 says a snooker ball has a mass of 0.2 kilograms. A snooker ball of mass 0.2 kilograms has a collision so that its direction of movement changes by an angle of 90 degrees as shown. The ball has a speed of 0.4 meters per second before collision and a speed of 0.3 meters per second after collision. What is the magnitude of the change in momentum of the snooker ball? तो पहले तो हम बात करते हैं initial momentum की. My initial momentum is horizontal. Keep in mind, momentum is a vector quantity. You can't simply add or subtract it if the directions are not, if they're not in the same direction, if they don't have the same line of action. So initial momentum is 0.08. Final momentum की बात करते हैं. Final momentum, mass into velocity. Mass once again is 0.2, velocity is 0.3. Final momentum is 0.06. And the two are at 90 degrees to each other, which means the resultant can be found using Pythagoras' theorem. So resultant squared is equal to 0.08 squared plus 0.06 squared. So R is equals to 0.1 kilogram meters per second. The answer is B. Don't make the mistake of subtracting the two. Okay, you can't do that. Don't make the mistake of adding the two. You can't do that. सही, आपको एक ही तरीके से कर सकते हो, वो है पाइथागोरस थ्योरम, क्योंकि 90 डिग्रीज पे है. अगर सेम डायरेक्शन होता तो ऐड सबट्रैक्ट हम कर लेते हैं. So the answer to 4 is B. Question 5 says a ball is kicked upwards at an angle of 45 degrees to the horizontal. So this is our ball kicked upwards at an angle of 45 degrees to the horizontal. After a short flight, the ball returns to the ground. So after some flight, it comes back to the ground. It may be assumed that air resistance is negligible. What is never zero during the flight of the ball? The horizontal component of ball's acceleration. No. Horizontal component of ball acceleration is always zero. क्योंकि horizontal direction में कोई force नहीं लग रही, तो horizontal direction में कोई acceleration नहीं है. Force तब लगती है जब horizontal direction में air resistance होती, but there is no air resistance. The horizontal component of ball's velocity, yes, the horizontal component of velocity stays the same. So if the initial velocity, let's say, is 3 meters per second, it will be 3 at this point, it will be 3 at the maximum height, it will be 3 at all these points. Yeah, Hamza, you would have gotten the same answer. So what do we do next? Our horizontal velocity of horizontal component of the ball's velocity is never zero. The vertical component of the ball's momentum, this becomes zero at the maximum height. ठीक है, वर्टिकल वेलोसिटी भी आपकी जीरो हो जाती है. जब वर्टिकल वेलोसिटी जीरो हो गई तो वर्टिकल मोमेंटम भी आपका क्या हो जाएगा, मैक्सिमम हाइट पे जीरो हो जाएगा. यस मुश्तबा. The graph shows the variation with time t of the displacement s of an object. Which graph represents the variation with time t of the acceleration of the object? Displacement का ग्राफ दिया हुआ है, हमसे पूछ रहे हैं कि acceleration का ग्राफ बनाना है. कैसे बनाएंगे डिस्प्लेसमेंट से एक्सेलरेशन? पहले हम डिस्प्लेसमेंट्स बना लेते हैं वेलोसिटी. सही. तो इनिशियली द ग्रेडियंट इज कांस्टेंट, द ग्रेडियंट इज पॉजिटिव. So positive and constant, something like this. Then the gradient is constant and it's negative. और उतना ही gradient है, ठीक है, स्लोप उतना ही है. तो इसको हम दूसरी साइड पे आगे बना लेते हैं. Here we go. Then it's again positive followed by another negative. So something like this. This is what your velocity time graph looks like. Now, इसका gradient जो है आपको acceleration देगा. The gradient of this graph gives you acceleration. What does the gradient look like? यहाँ पर gradient zero है, यहाँ भी zero है, यहाँ भी zero है, यहाँ भी zero है. So it's almost zero except for these spikes here. ये जो छोटी छोटी spikes आ रही है ना, 3, यहाँ पर ये non-zero value है. तो the only option that satisfies that is D. Yes, Yusuf. So the answer to 6 is question number 7. Question 7 says, can I explain question 6 again? Just a second. एक second. I'll go over 6 again. Just give me a second. There's a lag. I need to fix that. हाँ, done. तो देखो क्वेश्चन 6 के अंदर उन्होंने डिस्प्लेसमेंट टाइम ग्राफ दिया हुआ है और हमसे पूछे कौन सा एक्सेलरेशन टाइम ग्राफ होगा. पहली बात यह है कि जी डिस्प्लेसमेंट टाइम ग्राफ को देख के आप डायरेक्ट एक्सेलरेशन टाइम ग्राफ नहीं बता सकते, मुश्किल हो जाता है. आसान तरीका क्या है कि आप डिस्प्लेसमेंट टाइम ग्राफ के ग्रेडियंट को देख के वेलोसिटी टाइम ग्राफ बनाओ, वेलोसिटी टाइम ग्राफ के ग्रेडियंट को देख के एक्सेलरेशन टाइम ग्राफ बनाओ. सही. तो हमने जब इसका ग्रेडियंट बनाया तो हमने नोटिस किया कि यहाँ पर ग्रेडियंट पॉजिटिव है, कांस्टेंट है. तो मैंने बोला मेरी वेलोसिटी पॉजिटिव होगी, कांस्टेंट होगी. इसके बाद जो है हमारा ग्रेडियंट कांस्टेंट है, नेगेटिव है, तो वेलोसिटी कांस्टेंट नेगेटिव, देन कांस्टेंट पॉजिटिव, कांस्टेंट पॉजिटिव, कांस्टेंट नेगेटिव. सही. सो दिस इज व्हाट माय वेलोसिटी टाइम ग्राफ लुक्स लाइक. सही. तो ये आपके पास वेलोसिटी टाइम ग्राफ आया फरहान. अब वो हमसे पूछ रहे हैं कि एक्सेलरेशन टाइम ग्राफ बताओ. मैं आपसे पूछता हूं इस पॉइंट पे ग्रेडियंट क्या है, एंड यू वुड से द ग्रेडियंट इज 0. तो कहां पर है, कौन सा ग्राफ है जिसमें शुरू में ग्रेडियंट 0 है? डी. इस पॉइंट पे ग्रेडियंट क्या है? 0. इस पॉइंट पे ग्रेडियंट क्या है? 0. लास्ट पॉइंट पे ग्रेडियंट क्या है? 0. नॉन जीरो कहां पर है ग्रेडियंट? ये जो वर्टिकल लाइंस आ रही है ना, जो चेंज आ रहा है वेलोसिटी में, सिर्फ यहां पर थोड़ा सा नॉन जीरो है, तो वो इन्होंने यहां पर लाइन से रिप्रेजेंट किया हुआ है. But that's about it. The answer therefore is D. Is this clear to all of you? Mesam, Mahat, Sahar. Perfect हो गया. Question number 7 says, which expression defines force? देखो, force की definition O level तक आपने भले पढ़ी हो, force is the product of mass and acceleration, ठीक है, but force is actually defined as the change in momentum upon time, rate of change of momentum. Whenever they ask you what is the definition of force, it's always change in momentum upon time, rate of change of momentum. तो mass times change in speed into time ये भी नहीं है. Mass into change in speed upon time. This is not the definition. The definition is change in momentum per unit time. Force is delta P over delta T. So the answer therefore is T. Moving on. Question number 8 says a ship of mass 8.4 into 10 to the power 7 kilograms is approaching a harbor with a speed of 16.4 meters per second. By using reverse thrust, it can maintain a constant total stopping force of 920,000 newtons. How long will it take to stop? So resultant force is equals to mass times acceleration. They have told us that the maximum possible force is 920,000 newtons. So the ship is moving in this direction, and there's a force in the opposite direction that basically stops it. Is equals to mass. The mass is 8.4 into 10 to the power 7 times acceleration. What is acceleration? Acceleration is V minus U upon T. Final velocity minus initial velocity upon time. So 16.4 minus 0, change in velocity, upon the time, which is T, unknown. They want you to calculate the time. So you work out the value for time, and you get T is equals to 1500 seconds. So it can't be A, it can't be B, has to be C or D. 1500 divided by 60 is equals to 25 minutes. Sir, how have you taken the initial velocity as 0? अच्छा, मैंने initial velocity नहीं, मैंने final velocity 0 लिया, मैंने change in velocity ले लिया. सही? If you say कि सर ये आपने opposite क्यों कर दिया है, तो you are absolutely right. Let's go with 0 minus 16.4. This is what you want. लेकिन याद रहे कि resultant force भी negative होगी, क्योंकि वो opposite direction में है ना force. सही? Because it is in the opposite direction, आपका ये minus 920,000 हो जाएगा. तो I accommodated for that. आंसर आपका टी का 1500 ही आएगा. अगर आप ये भूल जाते हो और ये कर लेते हो तो आपका -1500 सेकंड्स आ जाएगा, which is not possible. Clear है? Can't you use the momentum formula? You can use the momentum formula. इसमें ड्राइविंग फोर्स कुछ भी नहीं है. There is only one force acting. Why are you not considering the weight? Because the weight is vertically downwards. Ship ऐसे move कर रही है. इस weight का कोई भी component इस direction में नहीं होगा. Weight is downwards. The ship is moving like this. There's no component in the direction of motion. You can do the same thing using resultant force is change in momentum upon time. But end में तो आपने वही करना है ना. Change in momentum क्या होगा? mv minus u upon time. तो वो तो you end up doing the same thing. अच्छा. Sorry about the disturbance. Question number 9 says the velocity time graph of 4 different objects are shown. Which graph represents an object falling from rest through a long distance in the Earth's atmosphere? So the initial velocity for an object that is falling through from rest, the initial velocity will be 0. B cannot be the answer. Because it's falling through the Earth's atmosphere, it will experience air resistance. Air resistance होगी तो एक पॉइंट ऐसा आएगा जब उसकी वेलोसिटी मैक्सिमम हो जाएगी, जब वो टर्मिनल वेलोसिटी पे रीच करेगा. So the velocity would eventually taper off to a maximum value, hence the answer is D. सही। और इससे हम ये भी देख के बता सकते हैं कि हमारी एक्सेलरेशन शुरू में मैक्सिमम थी, फिर कम हो रही है, फिर और कम हो रही है, और इवेंचुअली एक्सेलरेशन 0 हो जाएगी जब वेट और एयर रेजिस्टेंस क्या हो जाएंगे, इक्वल हो जाएंगे। नहीं, the gradient is constant for the earth, that is absolutely right, but it's falling through the earth's atmosphere, which means, Bisma, it will experience air resistance. Question 10 says, which statements about collision is correct? Kinetic energy is conserved in all collisions. No, kinetic energy is only conserved in elastic collision. Momentum is only conserved in perfectly elastic collision. No, momentum is conserved in all collisions. Kinetic energy is conserved in elastic collision. The relative speed of approach is equal to the relative speed of separation for perfectly elastic collision. Yes. U1 minus U2 is equals to V2 minus V1 for perfectly elastic collision. When two objects of different masses collide, they exert forces of different magnitudes on each other. No, irrespective of the mass of the object, when two objects collide, according to Newton's third law, the forces are equal and opposite. So C is the correct answer. Question number 11 says, a satellite uses two thrusters to adjust its motion in space. Each thruster exerts a force of 40 newtons on the satellite. The line of action of each force is perpendicular distance of 2.3 meters from the center of gravity of the satellite. These two parallel forces act in opposite direction. What are the magnitudes of the torque and the resultant force acting on the satellite due to the two thrust forces? पहले हम resultant force की बात करते हैं. Resultant force के लिए I can clearly see upward एक force लग रही है 40, downwards एक force लग रही है 40. The resultant force is 0. There is no net force. ठीक है। और जब हम रिजल्टेंट फोर्स की बात करते हैं, वी डोंट टेक देयर पोजीशन इनटू कंसीडरेशन कि सर ये तो बहुत राइट पे है, ये तो बहुत लेफ्ट पे है। नो, अप एंड डाउन, लेफ्ट एंड राइट, दैट्स इट। As far as the torque is concerned, the formula for torque is force multiplied by the perpendicular distance between the two forces. आप एक फोर्स लोगे और इस फोर्स को क्या करोगे, दोनों के बीच के डिस्टेंस से मल्टीप्लाई कर दोगे। सो 40 मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 4.6, which is equals to 180. The answer is C. Can we do for 2 times 40 to सर 4.6 कहाँ से आया? देखो, जब हम टॉर्क का फॉर्मूला यूज करते हैं ना, तो हम कहते हैं एक फोर्स, वन ऑफ द फोर्सेस, if the two forces are equal, if it's a couple, you take one of the forces and you multiply it by the distance between the two forces. That is one way of doing it. If this is confusing, you can say कि जी ये हमारा पिवट है, ठीक है, आप नहीं लो 4.6, आप ये पिवट ले लो। आप बोलो इसकी वजह से जो मोमेंट है वो 40 इंटू 2.3 है, और दूसरे की वजह से जो मोमेंट है वो भी 40 इंटू 2.3 है। You will end up with the same answer 180, irrespective of whether you use the formula for a couple or you use the formula for moment for two different forces. Is this clear now? Do you understand how we get 4.6? Just a second. Okay. Moving on to question number 12. Question रिजल्टेंट फोर्स वाला कॉन्सेप्ट वापस समझा दूं। देखो, रिजल्टेंट फोर्स के लिए आपने सिर्फ ये देखनी है, डाउनवर्ड फोर्स टोटल कितनी है 40, अपवर्ड फोर्स कितनी है 40, नेट फोर्स कितना है 0, upward is equals to downward. सही। So we get 184 with moments formula. You get 184 with the moments formula. I know you get 184 even with this formula. You actually get 184. लेकिन क्योंकि सारे ऑप्शंस 2SF पे हैं, इसलिए 180 आंसर है आपका। Question number 12 says the diagram shows two ways of hanging the same picture. In both cases, the string is attached to the same points on the picture and looped symmetrically over a nail in the wall. The forces shown are those that act on the nail. In diagram 1, the string loop is shorter than in diagram 2. Which information about the magnitude of the forces is correct? Now, one thing that I know for sure is कि downward force जो है total वो weight के equal होगी. This will be equal to weight. सही? In this case also, downward force is equals to weight. If the downward force is equals to weight, the upward force R1 and R2 will be equal to weight. So R1 should be equal to R2. That is the first thing. The second thing is 2t sin x भी तो होगी. देखो ये जो टेंशन आ रही है ना, सही, ये टेंशन इस वेट की वजह से ही आ रही है. तो या तो आप वेट कंसिडर करो या आप इसके टेंशन को कंसिडर करो, एक ही बात है. क्लियर है? हम अभी T1 को T2 को इग्नोर कर रहे हैं, हम सिर्फ R1 और W को कर रहे हैं. तो एक तो ये हो गया. तो मुझे पता चल गया R1 is equals to weight, R2 is equals to weight, and they're two identical pictures, same picture. तो R1 is equals to R2. The second thing is कि अब हम इसके components, अब हम क्या करते हैं, अब हम इसके components जो हैं, इसके components को देखते हैं ना, सही? तो इसका जो downwards component है, this is T1 sin theta. So let's say this angle is theta. Similarly, this angle is theta. This will be T2 sin theta. Clear? या अगर आप दूसरा वाला एंगल कंसिडर कर रहे हो तो cos होगा. और क्योंकि दो स्ट्रिंग्स है, दो साइड्स है, तो मल्टीप्लाई बाय 2 होगा. नाउ फॉर दिस क्वेश्चन यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड कि देखो क्योंकि ये जो टेंशन है, ये जो स्ट्रिंग है, इसका एंगल ज्यादा है, तो इसका थोड़ा सा कंपोनेंट जो है वो इस डायरेक्शन में होगा, कम कंपोनेंट इस डायरेक्शन में होगा. क्योंकि इसका कम कंपोनेंट इस डायरेक्शन में, तो इसको खुद को ज्यादा होना पड़ेगा ना, ताकि इसका कम कंपोनेंट भी इस वेट के इक्वल आ जाए. ऑन द कॉन्ट्ररी, इफ यू टॉक अबाउट दिस T2, ये T2 जो है इस डाउनवर्ड कंपोनेंट्स के करीब है, तो दिस विल हैव अ ग्रेटर कंपोनेंट. तो T2 कम भी हो, इट विल बी इक्वल टू वेट. सो आई नो T1 विल बी इक्वल टू T2. ठीक है? और फॉर अ क्वेश्चन लाइक दिस यू कैन क्लियरली सी कि जी T1 T2 इक्वल तो हो ही नहीं सकते, तो A कैन नॉट बी द आंसर. द ओनली पॉसिबल आंसर इज B. I hope this is clear. Can you explain again the T1 and T2 concept? I was expecting that. ठीक है? I was expecting कि जी T1 T2 वाले concept में मसला आएगा. सही. देखो, पहले तो हम ये बात करते हैं, लेट्स से कि ये वेट ऊपर, ये R1 जो है वेट के इक्वल है और वेट जो है 10 न्यूटन है. अगर मेरे पास नीचे की तरफ बिल्कुल वर्टिकल दो फोर्सेस हैं इक्वल, ठीक है, लेट्स से मेरे पास दो वर्टिकल फोर्सेस हैं, सही, लेट्स कॉल दिस T0, जो कि इस वेट को बैलेंस कर रही है, जो कि इस R1 को बैलेंस कर रही है. कैन यू टेल मी T0 की वैल्यू क्या होगी? ये एक टेंशन की वैल्यू कितनी होगी इफ इट इज बैलेंस्ड? 5 न्यूटन्स. ये भी 5 न्यूटन्स होगी बिल्कुल, और ये भी 5 न्यूटन्स होगी. क्लियर? अच्छा. नाउ व्हाट हैपेंस, अब मुझे पता ये चल गया कि मुझे डाउनवर्ड्स कितनी चाहिए, मुझे कुछ भी हो जाए डाउनवर्ड्स चाहिए तो 5 न्यूटन ही. अब मैं क्या करता हूँ, मैं इनका एंगल थोड़ा सा बढ़ा देता हूँ. सही, मैं इसका एंगल थोड़ा सा बढ़ाता हूँ. अब मुझे पता है कि अगर ये T0 की वैल्यू अभी भी मैं 5 न्यूटन लूंगा तो अब मेरा काम नहीं होगा. क्यों? क्योंकि इस 5 का जो डाउनवर्ड कंपोनेंट है वो 5 से तो छोटा होगा ना. सही. तो दिस दिस शुड बी ग्रेटर देन 5. ठीक है, ये समझ आ गया है कि ये 6 होना चाहिए, 6.5 होना चाहिए, 7 होना चाहिए, डिपेंडिंग ऑन द एंगल. लेकिन 5 से काम नहीं चलेगा, क्योंकि वर्टिकल कंपोनेंट, डाउनवर्ड कंपोनेंट 5 नहीं आ रहा, तो इसको 6 होना पड़ेगा, या 6.5 होना पड़ेगा, 7 होना पड़ेगा, व्हाटएवर. लेकिन अगर मैं इसमें और एंगल बढ़ा दूं, इफ आई इंक्रीज द एंगल इवन मोर, ठीक है, मैं इसका एंगल जो है और बढ़ा देता हूँ, लेट्स से मैं इसको ऐसा कर देता हूँ। अब मुझे पता है कि जी 6 से भी काम नहीं चलेगा, क्योंकि कुछ भी हो जाए मुझे डाउनवर्ड तो दोनों के 5 न्यूटन चाहिए, तो इसको अब 9 होना पड़ेगा। तो जैसे जैसे मैं एंगल बढ़ा रहा हूँ मुझे टेंशन इसमें बढ़ती जाएगी, ताकि उसका जो डाउनवर्ड कॉम्पोनेंट है वो कांस्टेंट रहे। क्लियर है? दिस इज हाउ यू थिंक ऑफ इट। सो इट हैज टू बी बी। इस सवाल के अंदर इतना मसला नहीं था, क्योंकि एक ऑप्शन था T1 इज ग्रेटर देन T2, द अदर ऑप्शन वाज T1 इज इक्वल टू T2। इक्वल्स तो नहीं हो सकता, सही? तो हैज टू बी बी। I don't get the concept of not being 5, but I don't know how it is increasing and not decreasing. The reason behind that is कि unless this force increases, जब तक ये force नहीं बढ़ेगी, इसका जो vertical component है वो 5 के equal कैसे आएगा? ठीक है, ये मसला आ रहा है। I'll, if you still have problem with this, I'll go over this at the end. ठीक है, मैथमेटिकल इसको साइन या कॉस से भी समझा दूंगा मैं। Question number 13 says an object shaped as a hemisphere rests with its flat surface on a table. The object has a radius r and density rho. The volume of sphere is 4 upon 3 pi r cube. What is the average pressure the object exerts on the table? Average pressure. देखिए जी, प्रेशर का फॉर्मूला होता है फोर्स अपॉन एरिया। फोर्स के लिए मैं ले लूंगा इसका वेट अपॉन एरिया। वेट की जगह मैं लिख सकता हूं mg अपॉन एरिया। सही, यहां पर मैं सिर्फ इसका फॉर्मूला जो डिराइव करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं। मास की जगह मैं लिख देता हूं डेंसिटी इंटू वॉल्यूम इंटू जी अपॉन एरिया। नाउ आई सब्स्टिट्यूट। नाउ फॉर अ हेमिस्फेयर, कैन समबडी टेल मी, एक हेमिस्फेयर है, इसका जो बेस एरिया होगा वो कौन सा शेप बनता है फॉर अ हेमिस्फेयर? आई डोंट हैव समथिंग हेमिस्फेयर हियर। तो हेमिस्फेयर का बेस एरिया क्या होगा? सर्कल होगा, बिल्कुल मुस्तंसिल। तो मुझे पता है कि जी डिनोमिनेटर में सर्कल का फॉर्मूला आएगा। डेंसिटी एज इट इज आ गई। जब स्फेयर का फॉर्मूला 4/3 पाई आर क्यूब है, तो हेमिस्फेयर के लिए जो कि आधा होता है, हेंस हेमिस्फेयर, वो हो जाएगा 2/3 पाई आर क्यूब। सही, स्फेयर का दिया हुआ, हेमिस्फेयर के लिए हाफ कर दिया। तो मैं कहता हूं वॉल्यूम है मेरा 2/3 पाई आर क्यूब। जी की वैल्यू एज इट इज पाई आर स्क्वायर्ड। Pi cancels out with pi, r squared cancels out with the square on top. What am I left with? I'm left with 2/3. I'm left with density. I'm left with r. I'm left with g. 2/3 rho r g. Yes, Anas agreed. 2/3 rho r g is the equation. क्लियर है? एक और तरीके से भी ये सवाल किया जा सकता है, वो ये है कि आप यूनिट्स देख लो। देखो, प्रेशर का यूनिट क्या होता है? प्रेशर का यूनिट होता है किलोग्राम पर मीटर पर सेकंड स्क्वायर। डेंसिटी होता है किलोग्राम पर मीटर क्यूब। आर स्क्वायर होगा मीटर स्क्वायर। दिस कैंसल्स आउट, किलोग्राम पर मीटर, ये तो नहीं हो सकता प्रेशर। डेंसिटी इज वंस अगेन किलोग्राम पर मीटर क्यूब। आर स्क्वायर इज मीटर स्क्वायर। जी इज मीटर्स पर सेकंड स्क्वायर। तो ये मीटर स्क्वायर मीटर मीटर क्यूब बन गया, कैंसिल हो गया, किलोग्राम पर सेकंड स्क्वायर, ये भी नहीं हो सकता। सही, 2/3 रो आर। I can clearly see this is not the answer. Kilogram per meter cube multiplied by r, which is meter. ये और यहाँ पर एक स्क्वायर बाकी रह जाएगा, किलोग्राम पर मीटर स्क्वायर, ये भी नहीं है। So it has to be D, so that you get kilogram per meter per second square. आपको पता है प्रेशर का फॉर्मूला रो जी एच से आता है, तो आप उस तरीके से करते शायद आपसे जल्दी हो जाता। तलाल, why did you divide volume by t 2? The reason is कि this is the volume for a sphere. हमारे पास हेमिस्फेयर है जो कि आधा स्फेयर होता है, तो उसको वॉल्यूम भी आधा हो जाएगा। क्लियर है? Area would be 2 pi r squared. No, area will be pi r squared. The area of a circle is pi r squared. Base area लेते हैं. Question 14 says a probe is used to monitor the quality of water in the sea. The probe is suspended by a vertical string which is attached to a sphere. The stationary sphere floats in equilibrium on the surface of the sea as shown. The sphere has a weight of 5 newtons. The probe and the string have a combined weight of 2 newtons. So the sphere has a weight of 5 newtons. The probe and the string have a combined weight of 2 newtons. So total downwards weight जो हो गया हमारे पास सबका मिला के total downward weight हो गया 7 newtons. सही. अब इस 7 newtons को अगर कोई चीज बैलेंस कर रही है तो वो एक ही चीज है, and that is the up thrust, and that should be equal to 7 newton because the question says it's in equilibrium. Downward force weight है, upward force up thrust है. The sphere has a weight of 5 newtons. The probe and the string have a combined weight of 2 newtons. The density of seawater is 1.03 into 10 to the power 3. The upthrust acting on the probe and the thread is negligible. The upthrust on the string on this probe is negligible. जो भी upthrust है वो sphere पे लग रहा है. This is the upthrust on the sphere. What is the volume of the sphere below the surface of the sea? ये कितना volume sea के अंदर है? For this, we use the equation that is the equation for Archimedes principle, which is force is equals to rho g v. इसमें याद रहे डेंसिटी हमेशा लिक्विड की होती है और वॉल्यूम आपका सॉलिड का होता है जितना वो पानी के अंदर है, जितना वो फ्लूइड के अंदर है उसका वॉल्यूम होता है, नॉट द एंटायर वॉल्यूम. What is the force? It is the upthrust, which is 7 newtons. What is density? 1.03 into 10 to the power 3. What is the value for G? 9.81. And what is the volume of the solid? The volume of the solid is V. And that is our unknown. Solving for V gives us 6.9277 into 10 to the power minus 4. This is the raw value, which is basically 6.93 into 10 to the power minus 4. And that is the answer, meter cube. ठीक है, हमें वेट पता था, हमें पता है वेट और अपथ्रस्ट सेम होंगे. हमने अपथ्रस्ट का फॉर्मूला यूज कर लिया रो जी वी, where V is the volume of the solid. Shouldn't we take the upthrust as 5 newtons because they said string plus probe upthrust negligible? No, क्योंकि स्ट्रिंग और अपथ्रस्ट, स्ट्रिंग और प्रोब पे अपथ्रस्ट नेग्लिजिबल है, लेकिन स्ट्रिंग और प्रोब का वेट तो कंसिडरेबल है ना, तो वेट तो उसका 7 न्यूटन है. अगर उस वेट को कोई चीज बैलेंस कर रही है तो वो 7 न्यूटन की फोर्स ही बैलेंस कर सकती है. और क्योंकि इनके ऊपर अपथ्रस्ट नेग्लिजिबल है तो सारा का सारा अपथ्रस्ट जो है वो स्फीयर पे लग रहा है. दैट इज व्हाट द क्वेश्चन मेंट. ठीक है, नॉट द वेट बीइंग नेग्लिजिबल. Question 15 says, what is the center of gravity of an object? An easy question. Is it the geometrical center of the object? No. It could be the geometrical center of the object for regular objects, but not necessarily. The point at which the weight of the object may be considered to act. Perfect. That is center of gravity. The point on the object with which there is zero net torque. The point where the gravity acts on the object. Gravity acts at all points. C and D are also incorrect. The answer is B. Simple definition of center of gravity. Guys, if you have problem in any question, after I repeat it, in case there's a question that you say, like Waji says, case he does not get question 14, just write that question down. I don't want to waste everyone's time going over the same question again and again. I'll answer your questions towards the end. Don't worry about that. A system with an efficiency of 74% wastes 230 watts of power. What is the useful output power of the system? अच्छा, तो देखो एक सिस्टम है, उसको हम 100% पावर देते हैं इनपुट. उस 100% पे से 74% वेस्ट हो जाती है और वो 74% कितनी है? 230 वॉट्स. दिस इज वेस्ट. तो हमसे पूछ रहे हैं कि यूजफुल कितनी होगी. हाउ मच ऑफ इट इज यूजफुल? यूजफुल इज बेसिकली 26%. एंड हाउ मच इज दैट? नाउ दैट इज सिंपल मैथ्स. If 74% is 230 watts, 26% would be how many watts? And you cross multiply. Ratio method. So X is equals to sorry. There's a problem with the question, as in I made an error in the question. It's 74% efficient. So this part here is 74 and the other part is 26. So what they did here was, to confuse you guys and me here, what they did was they give you the efficiency and they give you the wasted power. So they give you the opposite thing. So the wasted efficiency or the lost percentage is 26%, and that is 230 watts. So this will be 26 and this will be 74. And that gives you 654.6, which is 650 watts. Now you are saying, can the efficiency formula be used here? उसके लिए आपको input निकालना पड़ेगा. Input भी आप ratio से ही निकालोगे. सही? तो आप कर सकते हो एफिशिएंसी के फॉर्मूले से, लेकिन इनपुट कैसे निकालोगे? आप बोलोगे कि जी 26% इज वेस्टेड, तो 26% इज 230, तो 100% इसका कितना होगा जो हमने उसको इनपुट दिया, x. फिर आप एफिशिएंसी का फॉर्मूला यूज कर लो. यूजफुल आउटपुट अपॉन टोटल इनपुट इनटू 100 is equals to 74%. You can do it, but my day will directly do this. Question number 17. Now this was a good question. Is there any way we can be certain that we have to use ratio method? No, this only comes with practice. Sometimes the ratio is not as simple. कभी squared relationship भी होता है, तो ये practice से आता है. हाँ, you can do that, Kashan. So a projectile of mass 0.25 kilograms is at a height of 30 meters above the horizontal ground and traveling at a speed of 15 meters per second. A short time later, it is at a height of 35 meters. So there's a projectile which is initially at a height of 30 meters and has a speed of 15 meters per second. So 30 meters, let's say it is initially at a height of 30 meters and it has a speed of 15 meters per second. A short time later, it is at a height of 35 meters. So after some time, it has gained height. It is at a height of 35 meters, 35, and it has a speed of 5 meters per second. How much work is done against air resistance during this time? Now, how do we do this? Let's first find out what is the gain in gravitational potential energy. How much GPE is gained? So change in gravitational potential energy is equals to mg delta H. The mass is 0.25 into 9.81 into height, which is 5. It started from 30, ended up at 35. So this is equals to 12.3 joules. This is the gain in gravitational potential energy. In an ideal situation, the loss in kinetic energy should be equal to the gain in gravitational potential energy. But obviously there is air resistance here. Let's find out the change in kinetic energy. Half m v squared minus u squared. Okay? If you're doing this directly, please don't make the mistake of writing it as v minus u squared. Don't subtract this first. You need to write it as v squared minus u squared. इस तरीके से होगा. ठीक है, ये अलग अलग करो. इनिशियल अलग निकालो, फाइनल अलग निकालो. अगर आपको डाउट है, half into mass, which is 0.25 into v squared minus u squared, 5 squared minus 15 squared, and that is equals to 25 joules, minus 25 joules. मतलब इससे 25 joules lose किया और इसने 12.3 joules gain किया. बाकी जो एनर्जी है वो किस में गई? That energy got converted into heat. That is the work done against air resistance. How much is that? That is basically 25 minus 12.3, and that is 12.7 joules. 12.7 joules. Hence the answer is 13 joules. ठीक है, हमने पहले फाइंड किया कि काइनेटिक एनर्जी कितनी लूज की, हमने फाइंड किया ग्रेविटेशनल पोटेंशियल एनर्जी कितनी गेन की. अगर दोनों सेम नहीं है तो जो दोनों में डिफरेंस आ रहा है, दैट इज द एनर्जी लॉस्ट, दैट इज द वर्क डन अगेंस्ट एयर रेजिस्टेंस. If they would have given you the force, you could have used work done as force into distance or something along that line. Lekin they haven't given that. A spring has an unstretched length of 4.5 centimeters. The spring is fixed at one end and a force of 35 newtons is applied to the other end so that the spring extends. The spring obeys Hooke's law. What and has a spring constant of 420 Newton per meter. What is its strain? So let's first find out the extension. F is equals to K E. E is equals to F upon K. The force is 35 newtons. The spring constant is 420 newtons per meter. And that gives me the answer as 1 upon 12 meters. See? Now, I've seen students do this incorrectly. The reason behind that is this is centimeters, this is meters. तो आपको दोनों को सेम यूनिट में रखना जरूरी है. So let's convert this into centimeter. Let's multiply this by 100 and you get 8.33 centimeters. This is the extension, 8.33 centimeters. Now the formula for strain is extension upon original length. 8.33 upon 4.5, which is equals to 1.85. The answer is C. The only mistake I believe you can do in this question is by not converting this meters into centimeter or this centimeter into meter. Question number 19 says a wire is fixed at one end and extended by a force that is applied to the other end. The force is slowly increased from 0 and then slowly decreased back to 0. The force extension graph for the wire is shown. The graph line for the wire being loaded is the same as the graph line for the wire being unloaded. देखो जब लोडिंग कर्व और अनलोडिंग कर्व सेम होगा उसके मतलब है कि परमानेंट डिफॉर्मेशन नहीं हुई है. परमानेंट डिफॉर्मेशन नहीं हुई है उसका मतलब है कि वो इलास्टिक रीजन के अंदर अंदर है. इट हैज नॉट येट रीच्ड द प्लास्टिक रीजन. सो which statement describes the deformation of the wire? It is both elastic and plastic. No, it has not reached the plastic region. It is elastic only. Yes, it's only elastic. सही. अगर ये प्लास्टिक डिफॉर्मेशन होता, लेट्स से ये मेरा प्लास्टिक रीजन होता, दिस इज so this is what the unloading curve would have looked like. It would never return back to its starting position. That is the answer to number 19. Question number 20 says, in a progressive wave, two particles P and Q are on the surface of water are a fixed horizontal distance apart. P and Q oscillate vertically. At time t is equals to 0, the wave is as shown. Which graph best represents the variation with time t of the phase difference theta between the oscillation of the water particle P and the oscillation of the water particle Q? हमसे बोल रहे हैं कि जी इनका phase difference with time कैसे change होगा. सही. Now to understand this question, let me say कि जी ये एक point है P and let's say this is a point X. My question to you is, what is the phase difference between P and X? What is the phase difference between P and X? This is P, which is at the crest. This is X, which is at the trough. And yes, absolutely right. It's 180 degrees. Clear है? अच्छा, थोड़ी देर बाद ये होता है. अब I hope you know that कि जी particles जो हैं सिर्फ ऊपर नीचे मूव करते हैं, particles आगे पीछे मूव नहीं करते. So it's a progressive water wave. The particles only move up and down. Energy moves forward. what happens some time later is that the wave changes its shape. जैसे wave आगे travel करेगी ना, वो इस तरीके से हो जाती है. Now particle P is over here and particle X is over there. ठीक है, ये नीचे आ गया है, ये ऊपर आ जाएगा. My question to you is, what is the phase difference between P and X now? 180 degrees. It stays the same. So, you know, some of you are giving me answers as A, B, C. So to clarify that, acha, let's take one more case. Some of you now know the right answer. थोड़ी देर बाद होता ये है कि ये वेव जो है इस तरीके से, something like this. So X is here and X is here and P is here. Once again, half a wavelength apart. तो भाई ये 180 डिग्रीज ही रहेगा ना. दो पार्टिकल्स के बीच में जब डिस्टेंस फिक्स्ड है, तो हाउ कैन देयर phase difference change? It will not change. Therefore, the answer is D. If you talk about P and Q exactly, for P and Q, this is 0, this is 180, this is 270, approximately 270. Between P and Q, the phase difference is 270 degrees. It will always be 270 degrees irrespective of how much time passes. The phase difference between 2 points is fixed. ठीक है, तो 20 का आंसर है डी. Which statement about longitudinal waves and transverse wave is not correct? Is not correct. So both waves can be polarized. No. Transverse waves can be polarized. Sound waves, longitudinal waves cannot be polarized. This is incorrect. So the answer is A. Both waves can form stationary waves. बिल्कुल, sound की stationary waves तो हम पढ़ते ही पढ़ते हैं, साथ ही साथ हम और क्या पढ़ते हैं, हम रेडियो वेव्स की स्टेशनरी वेव्स भी पढ़ते हैं, हम माइक्रोवेव्स के भी पढ़ते हैं. सो दैट इज पॉसिबल. बोथ वेव्स कैन ट्रांसफर एनर्जी एज प्रोग्रेसिव वेव्स. यस, both waves obey the equation V is equals to F lambda. They do. So A is the incorrect answer. As an incorrect statement, it is the correct answer. (22) An observer hears a sound wave. Sure, Larev. Drop me a message and I'll help you out. An observer hears a sound wave emitted from a moving source. The observed frequency is less than the frequency. For 21, the answer is A. The observed frequency is less than the frequency of sound emitted from the source. So if this is this observer and this is your source, when it's moving towards, the frequency increases. When it's moving away, the frequency decreases. Because the frequency is greater than the actual frequency, I would say, and the frequency is less than the actual frequency. So they're saying it's less. What could be the reason behind that? The source is moving away. So if the source was instead moving towards the observer, so the frequency would be greater than the actual frequency. The speed of sound wave in air decreases. No. The speed of sound wave in air increases. No. Haji, can I explain it again? Yes, I can. The question says that the observed frequency is less than the actual frequency. Doppler effect में ये होता है कि अगर एक source आपकी तरफ आ रही है, if it's moving towards you, the observed frequency is greater than the actual frequency. If the source is moving away from you, the observed frequency is lesser. Yes, Hatim. सही. तो क्योंकि यहाँ पर frequency कम है as opposed to the actual frequency, I know that the source is moving away, Talal. Okay. अगर ये moving towards होता, the observed frequency would have been more. Question number 23 says, what is the approximate range of frequency of electromagnetic radiations visible to human eye? Haji, this is something that you need to remember. 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 You need to remember You need to remember the frequencies of visible light. So, ultimately speaking, red has a frequency of 400 to 480. Red has a frequency of 400 to 480 terahertz. Violet, which is on the other end of the spectrum, has a frequency of 670 to 790 terahertz. Okay, it's not megahertz, it's terahertz. So which one is the correct one? Obviously 430 to 750 terahertz. Tera is yes, Mustansir. Okay, either you remember the wavelength, okay, and then use the speed of sound to calculate the frequency. That is one way of doing it. Or you remember the frequency that it's in the terahertz region. That would also work. Okay. So question on polarization. And this is a good question. The question says, a beam of vertically polarized light is incident normally on a polarizing filter. The filter can be rotated so that it's always in a plane perpendicular to the beam. So let's say, let us see that this here. Okay. This is my vertical light, and this is my polarizing filter. And it can be rotated like this at any angle. The transmission axis of the filter is initially vertical. So if I were to draw the transmission axis of my filter, so this is what the transmission axis looks like. It's initially vertical. Here we go. A bit broader. So this is the transmission axis. It is initially vertical, and my light is also vertical. तो सारी की सारी लाइट जो है दूसरी साइड पे निकल जाएगी. The filter is first rotated clockwise by an angle of 30 degrees so that its transmitted light wave have intensity I30. तो हमने क्या किया? Initially vertical था, हमने इसको clockwise जो है 30 degrees rotate कर दी. सही. और दूसरी साइड पे जो इंटेंसिटी हमें मिल रही है, we are calling it I30. So what is the equation? The equation is I is equals to I naught cos squared theta. Malus law. I30, this is the name given to, is equals to I naught cos squared 30. See? And that gives you a value of, if I'm not wrong, 0.75 cos 30 squared. Yes. 0.75 I naught. I don't know what I'll do with this, but this is what the question says. I30 is equals to 0.75 I naught. तो वर्टिकल था, हमने उसको 30 डिग्री रोटेट किया, हमें पता चला जो भी इंटेंसिटी है उसका 0.75 दूसरी साइड पे हमें मिल जाएगा. The filter is then rotated clockwise by a further angle of 30 degrees. So it was initially at 30, उसको 30 और rotate कर दिया. That basically causes the angle to be 60 degrees now. So what is the new intensity of transmitted light in terms of I30? तो हम क्या करते हैं, हम बोलते हैं अब 60 डिग्रीज पे हमने रोटेट कर दिया है. I is equals to, and let's call this I60 just to distinguish, is equals to I naught cos squared 60. And this is equals to 0.25 I naught. So I60 is equals to 0.25 I naught. I30 is equals to 0.75 I naught. हमें कह रहे हैं कि I60 आपने बताना है, लेकिन किसके टर्म्स में बताना है? आपने I30 के टर्म्स में बताना है. So what can I do now is some substitution. I naught is equals to 0.75 upon I30. ठीक है, I naught को सब्जेक्ट बनाया, 0.75 upon I30. So 0.25 multiplied by 0.75 upon I30. Sorry, I30 upon 0.75. Wrote it upside down. I30 upon 0.75. I30 upon 0.75. सही. अब इससे फायदा ये हुआ कि I60 की इक्वेशन आ गई. We've got the equation for I60 and in terms of I30. So what is 0.25 upon 0.75? 1 upon 3, 0.3333. So the answer is 0.333 I30. 0.33 I30. That is the answer. A different question than the usual polarization question that they've given earlier, but a good one. Can I please explain it again? I can. देखो, इनिशियली आपके पास लाइट वर्टिकल थी और जो पोलराइजिंग प्लेन था वो भी वर्टिकल था. सही. हमने क्या किया, इसको 30 डिग्रीज पे रोटेट कर दिया. दूसरी साइड पे जो लाइट निकल रही है उसकी इक्वेशन हमारे पास आ गई, I30 इज इक्वल टू I0 cos स्क्वायर 30. सही. नहीं बची, वैसे नहीं कर सकते. यू कांट ब्रेक द एंगल्स अप. तो आपके पास आ गई I30 इज इक्वल टू 0.75 I0. फिर इसके बाद क्या हुआ, इसके बाद इसको हमने 30 डिग्रीज और रोटेट कर दिया. तो अब नया एंगल कितना हो गया, 60 डिग्रीज हो गया. अब जो नई लाइट आ रही है उसको पिछले 30 डिग्रीज का नहीं पता, उनको अब 60 डिग्रीज पता है. तो आप पुराने 30 को छोड़ दो. Now you talk about I60 and I60 is equal to I0 cos squared 60. And that is equal to 0.25 I0. Now they want the new intensity in terms of I30. So I made I0 the subject here, did some substitution. I got the answer as 0.33 I30. That was question number 24. On to question 25. Question 25 says a musical instrument is made using a long tube with a mouthpiece at one end. The other end is open and flared as shown. A musician maintains stationary sound waves with a node at the mouthpiece. So there's a node at the mouthpiece and there's an antinode at the other end. The lowest frequency of the sound that the instrument can produce is 92 hertz. Lowest frequency का मतलब है कि maximum wavelength आपके पास fundamental जो बनेगी, which is something like this. Obviously this is an enlarged view, लेकिन यहाँ पर node आ रहा है, यहाँ पर antinode आ गया. And this is quarter of a wavelength. Which different frequencies of sound can be produced the instrument? हमें पता है 92 तो हो सकता है, और कौन-कौन सी frequencies हो सकती है? My question to you is, how many of you remember the equation? When you have node at one end and antinode at the other end, what is the equation to find out the first overtone, the second overtone, the frequencies? Yes. So ये एक equation है, and that works for one end closed, the other end open, or one end node, the other end open. And the equation for frequency is Fn is equals to 2n plus 1 F0. ठीक है. I'll explain this without using the equation, लेकिन equation के साथ भी आप कर सकते हो. तो हमें ये फंडामेंटल F0 पता है कि भाई F0 कितना है. F0 is 75 hertz. This is the fundamental frequency. For F1, I'll say 2 into 1 plus 1 into F0, which is, sorry, 92, not 75, 92. 92. And that gives you 276 hertz. ठीक है. अगर आप इसको बगैर फॉर्मूला के करना चाहो तो the next wave that will be formed would be something like this. The next wave that you'll have will be something like this here. इसकी वेवलेंथ छोटी हो गई है. कितनी छोटी हो गई है? 1/3 हो गई है. जहां पर ये हाफ अ लूप आ रहा था, अब 3 लूप्स आ रहे हैं, तो 1/3 हो गई है आपकी. सही. Since the wavelength is 1/3 now, and frequency is inversely proportional to lambda, the frequency will be 3 times. What is 3 times of 92? 3 times 92. 276. So next is 276. ठीक है, फिर हम फॉर्मूला यूज करके इसके बाद वाला निकालते हैं। ये फंडामेंटल फ्रीक्वेंसी थी, फर्स्ट ओवरटोन F1 हमने निकाल दिया। व्हाट इज F2? F2 is 2 multiplied by 2 plus 1 into 92. So 5 into 92, which is 460 hertz. ये इक्वेशन कब एप्लीकेबल होती है? ये इक्वेशन तब एप्लीकेबल होती है जब आपको सेम लेंथ के अंदर अलग अलग फ्रीक्वेंसी से साउंड प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हो। आपको फंडामेंटल फ्रीक्वेंसी पता हो और आपको फर्स्ट ओवरटोन, उसके बाद जो अगली फ्रीक्वेंसी, उसके बाद जो अगली फ्रीक्वेंसी फाइंड करनी हो, तो आप ये फॉर्मूला यूज कर सकते हो। कंडीशन क्या है? एक साइड पे नोड होता है, एक साइड पे एंटी नोड होना चाहिए। ठीक है, दैट इज द कंडीशन हियर। सही, यू कैन ऑल्सो डू इट इफ यू हैव नेवर डन द फॉर्मूला, यू शुड बी एबल टू डू इट विदाउट द फॉर्मूला टू। इसके बाद अगला क्या होगा? इसके बाद अगली पॉसिबिलिटी, अगर वेव के टर्म्स में बात करें, यू वुड गेट समथिंग लाइक दिस। सही, हम नोटिस करते हैं यहाँ पर हाफ लूप आ रहा है। यहाँ पर कितने लूप आ रहे हैं? 1 2 3 4 5, एज इन 5 हाफ्स आ रहे हैं। तो वेवलेंथ 5 टाइम्स कम हो गई, फ्रीक्वेंसी 5 टाइम्स बढ़ गई। व्हाट इज 5 into 92? 460 हर्ट्ज। तो आप उस तरीके से भी कर सकते हो, सही, आइदर विद द फॉर्मूला और बाय यूजिंग द लूप्स। अच्छा, once again, I think this was a good question. Two waves of equal frequency and amplitude are traveling in opposite direction along a stretched string. When they meet, they form a stationary wave with nodes and two antinodes. So what I'll do is first I'll draw 3 nodes and 2 antinodes. मैं कहता हूं कि जी ये मेरी लेफ्ट और राइट लिमिट है, और इसके अंदर 3 nodes, 2 antinodes would look something like this. See? So I have a node here, a node here, a node here, and 2 antinodes at the center. The frequency of both the waves is double and a new stationary wave is formed. देखो, अगर आप फ्रीक्वेंसी डबल कर लेते हो तो आपकी वेवलेंथ को क्या होगा? आपकी वेवलेंथ हाफ हो जाएगी। वेवलेंथ हाफ का मतलब है जहां पर ये 2 लूप्स बन रहे थे, अब कितने लूप्स बनेंगे? 4 लूप बनेंगे। जहां ये 1 वेवलेंथ आ रही थी, अब कितनी वेवलेंथ आएगी? 2 वेवलेंथ आ जाएगी, बिकॉज द वेवलेंथ इज नाउ स्मॉलर। तो लेट्स डू दैट, लेट्स फिट इट हियर, लेट्स हैव 4 loops in the same region. Here we go. सही, तो हमने क्या कर दिया? हमने फ्रीक्वेंसी को डबल कर लिया, वेवलेंथ को हाफ कर दिया, वेव्स छोटी हो गई। The question is, how many antinodes are there in the stationary wave? 1 antinode, 2 antinode, 3 antinode, 4 antinodes. Some of you may say कि सर ये direct हो सकता था, we could do this directly without drawing the diagram. I know that, but the diagram helps in case you have any confusion. So, a simple question. Question number 27 says a transmitting mast sends out microwaves of wavelength 1.5 centimeters and radio waves of wavelength 1.5 kilometers. So there is microwave being emitted here and there is radio wave being emitted here. Microwave has a shorter wavelength. Radio waves obviously have a longer wavelength of 1.5 kilometers. A receiving aerial behind the mountain can detect the radio waves but not the microwaves. What is the reason behind this? The radio waves are coherent, but microwaves are not. No, that is not the reason. Coherence has nothing to do with it. The radio waves are diffracted around the mountain, but the microwaves are not. Yes, क्योंकि रेडियो वेव्स की वेवलेंथ ज्यादा होती है, तो माउंटेन से टकराने के बाद वो डाइफ्रैक्ट होना शुरू हो जाता है। माइक्रोवेव्स की वेवलेंथ कम होती है, when they hit the mountains, they are not diffracted. The radio waves are reflected by the mountains, but microwaves are not. No. The radio waves travel at the speed of light, but microwaves do not. Both travel at the speed of light. We know that. So the answer, therefore, is B. Sir, why is C wrong? The radio waves are reflected by the mountain. No, if the let's say the radio waves were reflected back, they would reflect back like this. They would reflect back like this. But receiving aerial tak pahunchna to that this has nothing to do with these radio waves going to the receiving aerial. Hatim. Option B means the radio waves are diffracted. So what happens is कि there's a reason कि कहीं कहीं आपके सेल फोन के सिग्नल आ रहे होते हैं, आपके रेडियो के सिग्नल नहीं आ रहे होते हैं, और कहीं कहीं आपके रेडियो के सिग्नल आ रहे होते हैं, आपके सेल फोन के सिग्नल नहीं आ रहे होते हैं. सही. कहीं कहीं सैटेलाइट फोन्स काम करते हैं, नॉर्मल सेल फोन्स काम नहीं करते हैं. उसकी कंडीशन क्या है कि जो ऑब्स्टिकल्स हैं, चाहे वो बिल्डिंग हो चाहे वो माउंटेन है, उनका साइज, उनके बीच में स्पेस जो है आपकी वेवलेंथ के इक्वल होगी ना, या करीब करीब होगी, तो दिल बी डाइफ्रैक्शन. अब हमारे पास वेवलेंथ ऑफ माइक्रोवेव इज 1.5 किलोमीटर्स. दैट्स अ लॉट. So this basically is relatable to the size of a mountain. Therefore, the mountain will act as a point from which these radio waves diffract. वो diffract होके spread होके दूसरी तरफ receiving aerial तक पहुंच सकेंगी. Microwaves क्योंकि उनकी wavelength बहुत कम होती है, there'll be no diffraction. Waves are emitted from two coherent sources. Which statement above the waves must be correct? If they maintain a constant phase difference, if they have a constant phase difference, they are in phase, not necessarily. They can be out of phase as long as it's constant. They are transverse. No, longitudinal waves can also be coherent. They have a constant phase difference. Yes, that is the definition of coherent. They have the same amplitude. No, not necessarily. So the answer to 28 is C. Question number 29 says, the diagram shows a screen that is a distance L from a diffraction grating. The grating has a total number of N lines. Total number of N lines, not lines per meter, not lines per centimeter, total lines बता रहे बस. Any two adjacent lines are a distance D apart. Okay, this is from the formula D sine theta is equals to N lambda. So this is distance D. A beam of parallel light of wavelength lambda is incident normally on a grating. Which quantities affect the distance between the first order diffraction maxima on the screen? वो पूछ रहे हैं इन दोनों के बीच का डिस्टेंस जो है, ठीक है, वो किन किन चीजों से अफेक्ट होगा. What affects the distance between these two? So D obviously, ठीक है, D sin theta is equals to N lambda. D चेंज हो जाएगा तो एंगल चेंज हो जाएगा, एंगल चेंज हो जाएगा तो ये करीब और दूर चले जाएंगे. बिल्कुल परफेक्ट. So it has to be A, B or C. Lambda, wavelength, yes. So if you change the wavelength, theta changes, has to be A or B. L. Now you don't generally talk about the distance L. You don't talk about the distance L. The reason behind that is कि हम एंगल की बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन यहाँ पर वो एंगल नहीं पूछ रहे, वो पूछ रहे ये जो डिस्टेंस है ना दोनों फर्स्ट के बीच में, what will happen to this? तो अगर मैं डिस्टेंस कांस्टेंट भी रखूं, लेकिन अगर मैं स्क्रीन को करीब ले जाता हूं, अगर मैं स्क्रीन को करीब ले जाता हूं, एंगल कांस्टेंट है, लेकिन क्या हुआ, ये फर्स्ट ऑर्डर मैक्सिमा के बीच में डिस्टेंस जो है वो कम हो गया. इस स्क्रीन को दूर ले जाता हूं तो इन फर्स्ट ऑर्डर मैक्सिमा के बीच में डिस्टेंस क्या होगा, बढ़ जाएगा. तो यस, इट इज अफेक्टेड बाय एल. नाउ द क्वेश्चन इज व्हाई नॉट एन. ठीक है, because as far as you remember, n was d is equals to 1 upon n, and some of you are saying this, sir, wo d is 1 upon n. What was this n? This n was lines per meter. ठीक है, this n is not lines per meter, this is total number of lines. तो भाई अगर मेरे पास डायफ्रैक्शन ग्रेटिंग है, लेट्स से दिस इज माय डायफ्रैक्शन ग्रेटिंग, अगर इसका इतने पीस के अंदर 50 लाइन है और वो मैं कांस्टेंट रख देता हूं, अब मैं ऐसे 2 पीसेस ले लूं, 3 पीसेस ले लूं, n की वैल्यू कम ज्यादा होगी, लेकिन लाइंस पर मीटर तो सेम रहेगा ना. सही. सो दे नॉट एक्चुअली दे आर ट्राइंग टू कंफ्यूज यू हियर. दे नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट लाइंस पर मीटर हियर, दे जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट द टोटल नंबर ऑफ लाइंस. सही. सो इफ आई हैव अ डायफ्रैक्शन ग्रेटिंग मैं इतना सा पीस ले लेता हूँ, ठीक है, इफ आई टेक अ स्मॉलर पीस, द टोटल नंबर ऑफ लाइंस वो कम हो जाएंगी, लेकिन लाइंस पर मीटर उतना रहेगा, डी की वैल्यू उतनी रहेगी, और उससे मेरे एक्सपेरिमेंट में कोई चेंज नहीं आएगा. That was 29. Question number 30 says a wire carries a current of 0.1 microamperes. The potential difference across the wire is 10 millivolts. How much energy is dissipated by the wire in a time of 10 seconds? What is the formula for energy? Energy is power into time. Power is energy upon time. Energy is power into time. Clear? Power is VIT. V is 10 millivolts. Current is 10 microamperes and time is 10 seconds. So 10 into 10 to the power minus 3 into 10 into 10 to the power minus 6 into 10. सही है. तो यहां पर हमारे पास, if you work this out, 10 into 10 to the power minus 3 into 10 into 10 to the power minus 6 into 10. The value that you get is, oh, sorry. This is 0.1 microamperes. I wrote this as 1 microamperes, my bad. 0.1. 0.1. The answer that I get is 1 into 10 to the power minus 8. 1 into 10 to the power minus 8 can also be written as 10 into 10 to the power minus 9 joules. And 10 to the power minus 9 is nanojoules. So 10 into 10 to the power minus 9 or 10 nanojoules is the answer. Okay? A simple question that just tried to confuse you with the prefixes and the tens and ones. Question number 31 says, what is the definition of the potential difference across an electrical component? How do you define potential difference? Potential difference is defined as the work done per unit charge. Energy transferred per unit charge. It is not energy per unit current, not energy per unit resistance, not energy per unit time. Energy per unit time would be power. So 31, pretty simple, straightforward. Any questions, any confusion up till this point? Give me a second. Let me grab a glass of water. Okay, so all clear. The prefix P stands for pico. 10 to the power minus 12. Which graph represents the way the current I through a filament lamp varies with potential difference V across it? Cannot be C because C is an ohmic conductor which has a constant resistance. Cannot be D. The answer is B. For a filament lamp, the resistance increases. When the resistance increases, the graph tends to curve towards the voltage side. When the resistance decreases, the graph tends to curve towards the current size. Sorry, remember this. (33) The table shows the properties of two different wires P and Q. Wire P has length L, R, resistance R, resistivity rho. Wire Q has length 2L, resistance 1/4R, resistivity 1/3 rho. Wire P has a cross section of diameter D. What is the diameter of cross section of wire Q? The straightforward approach to this is make equations. So for wire P, the general equation is R is equals to rho L over A. एरिया की जगह जो है हम पाई आर स्क्वायर या पाई डी स्क्वायर अपॉन 4 लिख देते हैं बिकॉज दे वांट इट इन टर्म्स ऑफ डायमीटर. पाई डी स्क्वायर अपॉन 4, तो 4 न्यूमरेटर में आ जाएगा. सही. So instead of area, I've used the formula for area. So for wire P, the resistance is R, the resistivity is rho, the length is L, and the area is pi d squared and 4 as it is. Sarah, remind me at the end. For Q, let's make the equation. The resistance is 1 upon 4R. The resistivity is 1 upon 3R rho. You have 4 as it is. The length is 2L and 4 into 2L. And the diameter is unknown. So let's write it as pi x squared. Now let's try to simplify. So I get R is equals to, this 4 gets multiplied to the other side. 4 4 is a 16, 16 2 is a 32, 32 upon 3. 32 upon 3 rho L upon pi x squared. ठीक है. हमें पता है ये भी R है, ये भी R है और ये भी R है. Let's equate the two. So this, here we go. And this, here we go. Equate the two. What I notice is rho cancels out with this rho, L cancels out with this L, pi cancels out with this pi, and you are left with d squared, x squared, and these numbers. Shifting d squared to this side, shifting x squared to the other side, x squared is equal to 32 upon 3 into 4 multiplied by d squared. So x squared is equal to 32 into upon 12, 2.67 d squared. X is equals to x squared. X is equals to square root both sides. ठीक है, दोनों साइड को स्क्वायर रूट कर देंगे. Square root of 2.67 is 1.63. X is equals to 1.63. So the answer is 1.63 D. सही. आप यही चीज रेशो से भी कर सकते हो. ठीक है. You can also say R is equals to rho L upon A and do it using that method. But because there are so many variables involved, students tend to get confused, but it's doable. Okay. Moving on to question 34. A cell has a constant EMF. A variable resistor is connected between the terminals of the cell. The resistance of the variable resistor is decreased. So you've got a cell here, and this cell has an internal resistance, and it's connected to a variable resistor. Which statement about the change of the cell's terminal potential difference is correct? When you decrease the resistance of the variable resistor, the total resistance decreases. When the total resistance decreases, according to the formula, current is equal to EMF divided by total resistance. When the total resistance decreases, the current increases. आपका current बढ़ जाएगा. Current बढ़ जाएगा तो अंदर जो loss हो रहा है, V is equal to IR, अंदर जो loss हो रहा है, that will increase. सही. तो टर्मिनल पोटेंशियल डिफरेंस कम हो जाता है. तो ये पहले 9 वोल्ट की बैटरी अगर 8 वोल्ट दे रही थी, टर्मिनल पोटेंशियल डिफरेंस 8 वोल्ट था, that will now decrease to a lower value, to 7 volts or 6 volts or 5 volts. So I would say the terminal potential difference is decreased, has to be A or B. Does the current in the variable resistor decrease? No, the current increases. So A has to be the answer. A says the terminal potential difference is decreased because more work is done moving unit charge through the internal resistance. Yes, more work is done per unit charge, more voltage in the internal resistor. तो अंदर ड्रॉप ज्यादा हो जाएगा, टर्मिनल पोटेंशियल डिफरेंस हमारा कम हो जाएगा. दैट इज द आंसर टू नंबर 34 ए. Kirchhoff's two laws for electric currents can be derived by using conservation laws. On which conservation laws do Kirchhoff's laws depend? The first law is Kirchhoff's current law. The total current entering is equal to total current leaving. That is basically dependent on the conservation of charge. Kirchhoff's current law is dependent on the conservation of charge. The total EMF, the total current entering is equal to the total current leaving a node or a junction. The Kirchhoff's second law, which says that in a closed loop, the total EMF is equal to total IR, that depends on the conservation of energy. जितनी बैटरी ने एनर्जी दी है उतनी ही बाकी कंज्यूम करेंगे. So that is B. Moving on to question 36. Question 36 says a battery of EMF 10 volts and internal resistance R is connected to 3 resistance R, 2 ohms and 50 ohms as shown. A current of 0.45 amperes is in the resistor of resistance 2 ohms and the current of 0.48 amperes is in the resistor of resistance 15 ohms. What are the values of this R and the internal resistance? So the first thing that I would do here is I would say अगर 0.45 है, ये 0.48 है, so this should be 0.93. This should be 0.93. 0.45 plus 0.48, and yes, that's definitely 0.93. ठीक है. I know voltage is constant in parallel. So 0.48 multiplied by 15, and that gives you 7.2 volts, which means these two combined should also get 7.2 volts. See? And this here should also be 7.2 volts. Now you can clearly do it. For this one, I know V is equals to IR. I know 7.2 is equals to current, which is 0.45 plus the total resistance 2 R. So 7.2 divided by 0.45 minus 2, and capital R is equals to 14 ohms. So it has to be A or C. Similarly, for internal resistance, if the terminal potential difference is 7.2 volts, अगर बैटरी असल में 7.2 volts दे रही है, तो बैटरी के अंदर लॉस कितना होगा? बैटरी के अंदर लॉस होगा 2.8 volts का. Now I can use V is equals to IR. I know बैटरी के अंदर 2.8 volts का लॉस हो रहा है. बैटरी के अंदर करंट कितना है? 0.93 है. बैटरी के अंदर रेजिस्टेंस कितनी है? R. So 2.8 divided by 0.93, which is the current, and that gives you the value of R is equals to 3.01. So A or B. The correct answer is A because it ticks both the boxes. सर 0.93 कैसे आया? देखो, इस वाले ब्रांच के अंदर 0.45 है, इस वाले ब्रांच के अंदर 0.48 है. किरचॉफ्स करंट लॉ क्या कहता है? करंट एंटरिंग शुड बी इक्वल टू द करंट लीविंग. ठीक है, तो मैंने इन दोनों को सिंपली ऐड कर दिया, क्योंकि जब तक यहां से 0.93 एम्पियर नहीं जाएगा, हाउ इज इट कि दूसरी साइड पे आपका 0.93 एग्जिट करे? सही. हफ्सा आई विल गो ओवर दिस अगेन. हफ्सा, हमने पहले तो ये 0.93 एम्पियर्स निकाल लिया. सही. फिर मैंने कहा कि इसका वोल्टेज निकाल लेते हैं. द वोल्टेज ऑफ दिस वन इज 7.2 volts. Because this resistor is connected in parallel with these two, इनका भी 7.2 volts होता है. Parallel में voltage stays the same. So I use V is equals to IR. The voltage is 7.2. The current is 0.45. The total resistance is 2 plus R. 2 plus R. And that gives you the external resistance as 14 ohms. Clear up till this point? Then what I did was, for this 10 volts battery, if it's actually giving 7.2 volts, what is the voltage dropped inside? The voltage drop inside is 2.8 volts. तो I said कि अंदर 2.8 volts का ड्रॉप आ रहा है, अंदर करंट आपका 0.93 है, तो रेजिस्टेंस कितनी होगी? रेजिस्टेंस हमारी आती है 3.01. Clear? Thirty-seven says a battery of negligible internal resistance is connected in series with a thermistor and a fixed resistor of resistance 12 kilo ohms. The table shows the resistance of the thermistor at two different temperature. तो टेबल ये बता रहा है कि जब 20 डिग्रीज होगा तो इस थर्मिस्टर की रेजिस्टेंस कितनी होगी 12 किलो ओम्स. मतलब इस थर्मिस्टर की रेजिस्टेंस और इसकी रेजिस्टेंस सेम होगी. ठीक है. The potential difference V out across the fixed resistor is 4.5 volts. तो इसका वोल्टेज 4.5 volts है when the thermistor is at a temperature of 20. तो 20 डिग्रीज पे ये 4.5 है. अगर 20 पे ये 4.5 है तो गारंटीड ये भी 4.5 volts ही होगा ना. क्यों? क्योंकि दोनों की रेजिस्टेंस सेम है, करंट सेम जा रहा है सीरीज के अंदर. They have the same current. So the voltage would be equal. 12 kilo ohms and 12 kilo ohms. That was the first part, which means कि बैटरी कितनी है, बैटरी कितनी है, वोल्टेज सेम होगा 4.5 volts and 4.5 volts, and the battery is a 9 volt battery. This is something that I figured out. Maybe it will be useful, maybe not. Okay. Moving on, what is V out when the thermistor is at a temperature of 50 degrees Celsius? So when this thermistor is at 50 degrees Celsius, the resistance here is 5 kilo ohms. Now I can clearly see that this is greater. How much is this greater by? This is greater by more than 2 times. तो इनका वोल्टेज भी इसी हिसाब से डिवाइड होना चाहिए. हम क्या कर सकते हैं? हम कह सकते हैं कि टोटल इनकी कंबाइंड रेजिस्टेंस कितनी है? 17. So the combined 17 kilo ohms get 9 volts. How much does the 12 kilo ohm resistor get? X volts. You cross multiply. X is equals to 9 into 12 kilo upon 17 kilo. The kilos cancel out. 9 into 12 divided by 17. 6.35. X is equals to 6.35. Okay. Or you can also use the formula for potential divider. GG, our formula for potential divider. I was coming to that before you guys bombarded me with that. V out, which is basically the same thing. Formula ratio से ही आता है. V out is equals to 12 upon 17 into 9. You'll get the same thing, 6.35. Now there's a question here. How did we get 9 volts? So this is how I figured out that the battery is 9 volts. Initially, when this was 12 kilo ohms and this was 12 kilo ohms, V out was 4.5. Both have the same resistance, so this should also be 4.5 volts. Since there is no other resistor present, the battery will be a 9 volt battery. Clear? So the answer is 6.35. Or you can also say that I have 9 volts, I have the total resistance as 17, I can find out the current, use the current to find out the voltage. That works too. Whatever works for you. Now, last final stretch. What is the conclusion from the alpha particle scattering experiment? Protons and electrons have equal but opposite charges. No, we did not find that out using the alpha scattering experiment. Protons have a much larger mass than electrons. No, that is the fact. All of these are correct. The question is, which one did you conclude from the alpha scattering? You did not conclude this. The nucleus consists most of the mass of the atom. Yes. Some of the alpha particles deviated at an angle greater than at a very large angle, and that basically means that the nucleus is at the center, it's tiny, consists of most of the mass. That was from the alpha scattering experiment. The nucleus of an atom consists of protons and neutrons. No, we did figure out that the nucleus was positively charged, but consists of protons and neutrons. No, alpha scattering से नहीं आया था वो. Question number 39 says, Americium-241 is a radioactive nuclide used in smoke detectors. It undergoes alpha decay to form nuclide X. The decay may be represented by the equation shown. What are the values of A and Z? So, bhai, alpha is 4, 2. Simple question. So, A will be 241 minus 4. What is 241 minus 4? 237. 237. And Z will be 95 minus 2. What is 95 minus 2? 93. So 237 and 93. A very simple, straightforward question. The next one is even easy, simpler. The next question says, a top quark has a charge of plus 2 upon 3e, where e is the elementary charge. What is the charge of an anti-top quark? So if a top quark has a charge of plus 2 upon 3e, anti-top quark will have the charge that has an equal magnitude but opposite sign. So minus 2 upon 3e. That's the answer. I hope this is clear.